Are you looking for a better sounding exhaust? Do you want to dress up your engine? Do you need to remove your O2 sensors? Okay, that last one was specific to me and a really bad reason to do this. I'm installing headers. Hola! I'm Mike, the backyard mechanic, and this is the Mustang. My O2 sensors are bad and I need to get them replaced because it's almost time to get the Mustang inspected. But the sensor on the driver's side won't come off without removing the exhaust manifold. So I figured I'd kill two birds with one stone and install headers. In part 4 of this series, Nerd Me went over the different types of headers and decided that shorties are the best for my situation. I do not expect a significant increase in horsepower. So why do it? To check a box on the man card, of course. It's important that you maintain a proper balance on your man credit card over that of your man debit card. One thing that's not on the man card list is one of my past jobs, which is a good thing because I'm not sure if backup dancer for Beyonce is a credit or a debit. Let's unbox some headers. These are 1 5/8 BBK shorties with a polished silver ceramic finish. Shorties are a direct replacement for exhaust manifolds. They work with existing catalytic converters and exhaust pipes. These are top-of-the-line headers. In fact, you could call these the Beyonce of headers. The first thing I did was inspect them. I checked all the welds along the tubes, at the flanges, and inside the collectors. Next, I checked the flanges for straightness. First one is perfect. Second one is off by quite a bit, 1/16 of an inch to be approximate. I researched the forums online and found multiple assurances that 1/16 is manageable and just needs to be carefully bolted down flat, which I can confirm after installation, the headers don't leak. The headers don't have any defects, so before starting work I put in the studs using the double nut trick that I showed in 5 ways to remove a stud. I have 7 days until inspection. Most of what I've read online is that you can do this in a few days. Plenty of time. Let's get started. The first thing is to disconnect the battery. Actually completely remove the battery in my case. The reason being is the O2 sensor connector is on the passenger side behind the engine, here. The only way to get to it is to remove the battery and tray. The tray is held in place with 3 8mm bolts, and the battery cable is clipped to it. Now I have room to grab the connector and pry it open with a long screwdriver. A few engine accessories need to be removed to get them out of the way, starting with the cross member. The intake cover is held on with 2 8mm nuts in front, and there is a clip that needs to be removed in the back. The same 8mm socket works on the hose clamp, so the air tube can be removed. There is a connector on the air cleaner that needs to be unconnected, and while I'm at it, I'll pull off the clip that holds it to the wheel well. The air cleaner is held in with one 10mm bolt. Then it can be removed. Disconnect the hoses from the purge valve and slide it off to get it out of the way. I want to point out here the advantage of how a polished, smooth garage floor makes it easier to navigate under the car. The Mustang has an H-pipe which makes dropping the exhaust easy. The nuts are removed with a 15mm socket, and then I pry apart the clamps with a screwdriver and slide them back out of the way. There are 2 downstream O2 sensors by the transmission that need to be disconnected, one on the passenger side and one on the driver's side. Now to remove the nuts from the manifold studs. These all tend to be tricky to get to, but like this first one, it's a matter of long extensions and universal joints. As I remove this nut on the driver's side, you can see that I have a problem here. This one has been rounded. I gave it a shot, but the socket just spins on it. This is concerning and could set my project back just as I had started. My first attempt was to get a 14mm socket instead of a 15mm and hammer it on. To my utter shock, this worked. I managed to get all my nuts off. Grow up, Mike. That's not what the audience is thinking. I had the back of the Y-pipe supported with the floor jack, which I can now lower. Now it's a matter of unhooking the exhaust flange from the manifold studs and lowering the Y-pipe to the floor. Now it can be dragged out from under the car and moved out of the way. While I'm at it, I did a quick inspection of the condition of the catalytic converters. The honeycombs look pretty clean in both. The engine needs to be lifted. This will give me more room to access the manifold bolts, but also the motor mounts are going to need to come off so that there is room to get the headers in. The proper way to do this is with a support bar like this one, but I don't have a $200 support bar. But I do have a 25-cent piece of wood that I can put under the oil pan. I jack it up carefully while I occasionally check for obstructions. Like this one time I forgot to remove the cross member. Now to remove the motor mounts for clearance. The main nuts are accessible from the top of the engine compartment. The driver's side is zapped off with my impact wrench. And then the passenger side is removed the same way. The 15mm bolts that hold the mounts to the engine block are accessed from underneath. Like a lot of things that are difficult to access on an engine, you want to remove the most difficult bolts first and then leave the easiest one for last, so the part isn't falling off as you struggle with that difficult bolt. The bolts are all broken free with the hand ratchet and then removed with my power ratchet. Now for the exhaust manifold studs, starting with the driver's side. These studs on top have already been broken free with a socket. In this first shot, you can see where I already removed the stud on the right. It was ultimately the only nut that came off. All the others pulled the stud. I left the left stud on top to be removed last. Now moving to underneath the car. You can see I broke the stud on the right. Be sure to watch 5 ways to remove a stud to see how I got this out. The ones on the bottom are more rusty, so I'm using an impact on them in an effort to prevent breaking any other studs. I couldn't get the impact on the left one, so I had to break it free with a manual ratchet, and then I could use my power ratchet. Then back to the top to remove the last stud, which drops the manifold down where it can be pulled out through the bottom. Now to the passenger side. Like the driver's side, the top bolts can be broken free with the manual ratchet and then removed with the power ratchet. The stud on the right has an AC line in the way. I could only get to it with the ratcheting wrench. Now to the bottom, and again using the impact, which works on the left 2 studs. The third one though was tough to access. I came in through the top using a breaker bar to loosen it, then finish it off with the power ratchet. With no access for an impact, the one on the right was done with a ratchet. I left the easiest one on top for last, removed it, and dropped the manifold, which I was then able to fish out through the bottom. The starter also has to be removed because it'll be in the way of inserting the passenger side headers. It's held in by 3 bolts. I'm able to access the top 2 bolts from the top of the engine compartment. From underneath, I was able to zap the last one off with the power ratchet. I left the cables connected and set the starter on the A-arm. The steering shaft is also in the way. Start by removing the 10mm pinch bolt from the knuckle. The shaft will pull out of the knuckle, but not all the way. The first thing I did was hammer and pry on the steering shaft. Carefully, I didn't break anything. It looks like the shaft should slide up and out of the way, and it does in fact do that in an accident. It does not do that for maintenance. This was the wrong path. I spun my wheels on this problem for more than a few hours. Many sources on the internet said that the way to get the shaft out of the knuckle is to remove the bolts to the rack and pinion assembly and push the whole thing forward. I started doing this and spent maybe a few hours wrenching on those bolts. They're designed to not loosen. It's sort of like they're screwed into heavy-duty lock nuts. I started getting frustrated with this and searched a bit more. I found on a forum where someone said to just remove the 2 nuts for the steering shaft under the dash. This wasn't super clear, and it's not super obvious, but I went ahead and took those nuts out, and the shaft pushed back like super easily. And now it's disconnected. The dipstick was difficult. It started easy enough. Remove the bolt that holds it in place with the 10mm socket. Now the tube needs to be pulled out of the engine block. You can see in the first shot how I gouged up the bottom of the tube as I tried multiple ways to pull it out. It turns but does not come out. Prying, twisting, and pulling did not work. Finally, I landed on gripping the tube up high with the vice grips and with a pry bar hammering up on the vice grips between them and the engine block. This hammering technique is what finally got the tube out. From Amazon, I bought NTK sensors for 35 bucks each, as these have the best reputation. You might say they are the Beyonce of sensors. They even come with anti-seize pre-applied on the threads. Before installing the header on the driver's side, the sensor needs to be installed. Any gunk on the mounting surface needs to be cleaned. Using a metal file on an aluminum block is a big no-no, but I'm being very careful not to scratch it. I finished cleaning it with a green scrubby. The headers come with Felpro gaskets, but I'm also using this Permatex Ultra Copper RTV silicone gasket maker. Between the two, I do not expect any leaks, even from the one with the warped flange. I put a bead of RTV around the exhaust ports and then smoothed it out so that it's even but not too thick. I repeated the process on the header. I'm now trying to work as quickly as I can because ideally this will be put together and the bolts snugged up to flatten this RTV surface before it dries. I have an hour. I'm on the clock. The headers have two slots on the bottom. This allows you to put two bolts in the engine block to rest the headers on. Those two bolts are also holding the Felpro gasket in place. I got this Permatex aluminum anti-seize to use on the header bolts. I don't trust the copper stuff in my aluminum block. Galvanic corrosion, you know. I put a little dot on each bolt. Putting anti-seize on the bolt can be messy. It would be better to put some in the bolt hole, which I do later with the motor mounts. As you will see, some of these header bolts are enormously difficult to just get started because of lack of access, so you end up handling them quite a bit. You don't want to get anti-seize on your hands because it contains heavy metals, which is toxic, so you have to wear gloves, which is fine, but it still makes a mess. The header is held in place very loosely with bolts 7 and 8. I'm putting in number 1 to help hold it up against the block, but nothing is tight until all 8 bolts are started. Bolt number 2 goes in easily. Bolt 3 was an enormous challenge. I ended up holding the bolt between these two fingers and then pushed it into place and started the bolt with a wrench. It's not great to start a bolt with a wrench instead of your fingers, but you adapt with headers. A small magnetic tool would have come in handy. You can hold it in place and use this instead of your fingers, and you don't have to distort your body to get into the right position. I didn't have this magnet at the time, it was missing. I have kids. All of the bottom bolts are very accessible. I put in bolts 5 and 6 and snugged up 7 and 8. I tightened all the bolts to just a few foot-pounds and let the RTV gasket maker cure for an hour. Now it's time to torque the bolts. I read different torque specs online and basically decided that 22 foot-pounds sounds like the right measurement. But there was nowhere near enough room to get this torque wrench in there. What I did was set the wrench to 22 pounds and tightened a random bolt to get a feel for how much pressure to use. I choked up on the wrench because I'm not using an 18-inch bar, I'm using something much shorter. 22 pounds with a short wrench is actually quite a bit. It's pretty much how I've always worked. You tighten a bolt according to how big it is. The torque pattern for a header is like most things on a car, inside out. Until you get to engine internals, it's always as simple as that. I used my 10mm ratcheting wrench for the final torque. It's critical to have a set of these when working on headers. The passenger side was pretty much the same process. Clean and RTV the block, RTV on the header, and place its slotted holes on the back two bolts. Bolt 4 goes in first. It's the only one on the top of this side that is not a nightmare. I used a new trick for bolt 2. I held the bolt in position with my ratcheting wrench and put pressure on it with a long screwdriver and tightened it up. I can't tell you how risky it is to start bolts this way, especially when you're screwing into aluminum threads. I was extremely careful. Bolt 3 I was able to just barely start by hand and finish it off with the ratcheting wrench. All of the bottom bolts were loosely tightened, and I repeated the process of waiting an hour and then torquing them down. The dipstick is put into place from the top. From under the car, grip the tube with the vice grips just above the flange and hammer on the vice grips to push the tube into the hole. Then the 10mm bolt can be put in. The starter goes in next and is nowhere near as easy as I'm about to make it look. See this video on galled threads to know why the starter took an entire day. To get started, I started the starter with anti-seize in the bolt holes and then lifted the starter into position from underneath and pushed it into place. I started all the starter bolts by hand and then tightened them up with a different series of extensions. That makes me a starter finisher. The steering shaft is next. I push the shaft into the knuckle. As I do this, you can see under the dashboard how the shaft is being pulled into the engine compartment. I tighten the 10mm bolt on the knuckle. Then under the dashboard, I put the 10mm nuts on the retaining plate and tighten it up. The passenger side motor mount needs to be put in place, despite that it is very much like a challenging Chinese puzzle. But I did ultimately get it in place. All of the bolt holes were prepped with anti-seize. The two easy bolts on the bottom were put in first. Then I tackled the stud on the upper right. This had a galling problem as well, and I needed a bench vise and a breaker bar to get the nut off. This is a new nut with anti-seize that is used to attach the ground cable. The driver's side was considerably easier. The holes were prepped and the mount put in place. Screw the screws. As I slowly dropped the engine, it became apparent there is an alignment issue. The engine is shifted toward the passenger side and the motor mount holes are not lining up with the studs. The solution I came up with was this 2x2 as a pry bar and a large socket as a fulcrum. I lowered the engine until it had just a little weight on the motor mount studs, then pushed on the lever. This popped them both into place. I then made sure the mount covers were properly in position and then lowered the engine the rest of the way. The headers block access to the motor mount nuts from the top, so now I have to sneak in there from underneath and in the back with my 15mm ratcheting wrench. Same on the other side. Before reinstalling the exhaust, I put the new upstream sensor on the passenger side of the Y-pipe and then slid it under the car. Then I slide under the car and under the Y-pipe and get close and personal with it. The Y-pipe isn't that heavy, but it's awkward and you have to accurately place it on the header studs. I used a jack stand in the back and I used the jack on the side to help hold it in place while I adjusted its position. Next, using my impact, I put the nuts on. The originals were 15mm, but the headers came with 18mm nuts. The H-pipe reconnects in reverse order. Spread the clamp with the screwdriver to slide it in position over the front and back pipe. Then put the nuts on with my impact. Make sure these nuts are tight. You don't want your exhaust to fall off from the back pressure of stomping on the gas while showing off your headers. While I'm under the car, I connect the downstream sensors. The NTK sensors have extra long cables, and I didn't like how it was hanging on the driver's side, so I used a wire tie to keep it up and away from the exhaust. Time to wrap this up and put the engine back together. Started right up. If I didn't know any better, I'd say I was getting good at this. The Mustang now has an additional metallic growl. The exhaust is a little bit louder, but not too loud. Sounds good when cruising, but aggressive when I stop. I ran the scanner on the Mustang with its new sensors, but unfortunately I got a P1000. Which means you did work on the car and need to put some miles on it before it has accurate codes. This means I missed the deadline. Inspection is tomorrow. So I drove it 5 days and put 100 miles on it. Took it in after this and got another failed inspection report. While I was there, I had them confirm my fears. It's a bad ECU. As in physically bad. It has shorted to ground. Frankly, I'm lucky it was running at all. So I've missed my deadline by 5 days, and now I need a new ECU, which I will fix next time, because this is to be continued, and I would like some more scenes. I have more. So did the headers make it better? It did make it worse. Oh, I've got a fan online. Hey fan. Did you like the video? Thanks, fan. In my last video, I showed a lot of bloopers. Looking at the retention graph, 85% of you did not appreciate that. So I decided to stop making mistakes. That's what you get. When part 6 of the sensor saga is ready, it will show up here. In the meantime, watch 5 ways to remove a stud. Gotta remove those studs. I bought NTK sensors on Amazon for 35 bucks each, as they have the best reputation. That sounds like I'm saying Amazon has a good reputation, and that's not what I mean at all.